This scammer stole $200 million and is now behind a bunch of TikToks trying to get him released from prison early. And this is after he orchestrated multiple multi-million dollar schemes that cost victims over $200 million, including running an $8.5 million fraud from his prison cell using his wife as an accomplice, while he was serving a 25-year sentence for his original $179 million scam.
The CEO of First Farmers Financial is being sentenced to 25 years in prison for fraud in attempting to escape to South America. Nikesh Patel was free on bond after admitting to selling $179 million worth of sham loans to Milwaukee investment firms. He confessed in court that he was able to pull this off by providing fake documents that said his loans were guaranteed by federal government.
I mean, this is just outrageous. And the first time I came across the story was on a reel that popped on my Instagram feed that said, "I'm currently serving 52 years in prison for a non-violent crime." And my first thought was, wow, that sounds insane. What did this guy do? There's no way. There's no way you're serving 52 years for a non-violent crime. What could you have possibly done to have this happen? Well, apparently a lot. Because the more I dug into this guy, the deeper I realized the rabbit hole was. Because it's safe to say there was way more to the story than what he was telling us here. Because this guy might be one of the most persistent and audacious financial criminals we've ever covered here on this channel. And what started as a fake loan business turned into a decade-long crime spree that didn't even stop when he was behind bars. So meet Nikesh AJ Patel, a 41-year-old former CEO from Florida who turned what could have been a very legitimate business into one of the largest USDA loan fraud schemes in American history. Before everything went sideways, Patel seemed to be living the American dream. He was a successful businessman, partially owned a restaurant, and had recently purchased 5 different hotels. But underneath all that success was a massive house of cards that was about to come crashing down. So, what happened? Well, back in 2011, Nick was nearly a 30-year-old entrepreneur from Windermere, Florida, who likely resembled any other ambitious businessman trying to make it in the financial world. He partnered up with a guy by the name of Timothy Fisher, a banker at Wells Fargo in California, to launch something called First Farmers Financial, which, on the surface, looked like a legitimate lending company. Nikesh ran operations from Florida, while Timothy handled things from the West Coast. Their business was supposed to work with the USDA's Business and Industry Guaranteed Loan Program, which basically is the government's way of encouraging private lenders to help rural communities grow. This idea is simple. If you lend money to businesses that improve rural areas, the USDA will guarantee a chunk of that loan, making it a very safe investment. So to make that work in practice, their company First Farmers would find legitimate businesses that needed money, arrange loans for them, get the USDA to guarantee part of those loans, and then sell those government guaranteed portions to investors. Since the US government was backing those loans, they seemed to consider rock solid investments for retirement plans, banks, and other institutions. But Nikesh, he looked at this whole system and thought, well, why bother with actual businesses and real borrowers when you can just make everything up? And that's essentially what he did, because starting in late 2012, Nick started to craft what might be one of the most elaborate financial fiction projects ever made. He didn't just create a few fake loans, he built an entire universe of non-existent businesses, fictional entrepreneurs, and imaginary rural development projects. I can just picture this guy going ham on the whiteboard frantically, but with just a whole new universe for himself of fake businesses. So over the span of 2 years roughly, Nick fabricated 26 completely fake loans ranging from $2.5 million to $10 million each. And that was nothing simple, because he created detailed business plans for companies that did not exist, forged signatures of USDA employees that he never met, and even invented fake loan identification numbers that looked official enough to fool professional investors. Then to make everything look legitimate, he even invented a fictional accountant who supposedly certified audits of these non-existing businesses. So every document, every signature, every financial statement was just completely made up. Nick's first target was Pennant Management, a Milwaukee-based investment firm that specialized in buying USDA guaranteed loans and packaging them into investment funds for their clients. So to get Pennant interested, Patel, they had to convince them that First Farmers was legitimate, successful, and just have been operating for a long time. So the way he did that was by creating fake financial statements showing millions in assets, healthy cash flows, and steady profits. But of course, none of that was real. This will be a theme from this guy. This is just crazy. So between May of 2013 and September of 2014, more than a whole year, Patel sold Pennant $179 million worth of loans that existed essentially only in his head. Our guy sold $179 million of air. crazy work. And the money flowed from Pennant's clients, which were retirement plans for teachers, municipal employees, and regular working Americans. So this really puts Patel into the Hall of Fame of scumbags. So essentially, by him selling this $179 million worth of air, that just parked that money straight into a Florida bank account that only Nick could access. So from there, he just went on this massive spending spree. Like, essentially, he just started spending money like someone who won the most illegal lottery ever. Because once Patel had access to nearly $200 million in stolen funds, I mean, the guy went wild. He spent more than $130 million buying, renovating, and operating hotels. Not fake hotels, actually, for fake loan purposes, actual hotels that he could apparently, run as legitimate businesses while simultaneously running one of the largest financial frauds in history. I'm assuming this was to keep a cash flow going so he can keep paying his loan balances. But obviously, he couldn't leave it at that. He also kind of had to go down the normal rabbit hole of buying a bunch of luxury cars, including a Rolls Royce, a Lamborghini, a bunch of custom jewelry, and then he flew around the world in a private jet and frequently took vacations to Panama, where he apparently went to blow off some steam from his stressful job, which, was stealing people's pension money. But he owned a restaurant in Florida, had multiple homes, a boat, and was throwing around money like it was going out of style. Meanwhile, to keep the scam running, Patel had to make it look like the fake borrowers were actually making loan payments. So he used some of that stolen money to send principal and interest payments back to Pennant's investors, creating the illusion that everything was working perfectly. And then also spent about $26 million buying back 3 other fake loans that he previously sold to a different investment firm. Because it was safe to say that people started to get suspicious of him as the whole elaborate scheme started falling apart in September of 2014, when someone at Pennant Management began noticing that things just did not add up. Like, the math was not mathing here. Pennant employees, they were trying to verify some details about First Farmer loans, and then they just kept running into dead ends. They couldn't locate certain borrowers, they couldn't verify business addresses, and when they started cross-referencing to the USA databases, they discovered that 25 out of the 26 loans weren't even in the government's computer system. And that's when the dominoes really started falling. Because on September 29, 2014, federal agents charged Nikesh Patel with wire fraud and arrested him the very next day. Pennant Management, the company that bought all these fake loans, completely collapsed because of the fraud and shut down its investment advisory business entirely. So it's just hilarious that these TikToks were like, oh, it was nonviolent crime, because sure, it was nonviolent, but he completely destroyed so many lives for what he did. The dude probably couldn't have ruined that many lives even if he went around robbing people at gunpoint, because the human cost was devastating. 42 retirement plans lost money that working Americans had saved for decades. Community banks took massive hits, and municipal governments saw their carefully made investments completely vanish. And these are loans people thought were safe, but, obviously it was just air. There was nothing really backing those loans. But this was just the end of the beginning of the story, because after his arrest, Nick hired lawyers and started playing what might be the longest con of his entire career, convincing everyone that he was reformed and just wanting to help all of his victims. So in December of 2015, a federal grand jury indicted him on 5 counts of wire fraud, each carrying up to 20 years in prison. Initially, he pleaded not guilty, but by December of 2016, he changed his plea to guilty on all counts. And this conviction carried a whopping maximum sentence of 100 years, plus $1.25 million of fines. So, it was safe to say he was facing some serious time. And the court scheduled his sentencing to be in April of 2017. But that's when Patel's true genius for manipulation really started showing up. Because between February and November of 2017, Patel just kept filing motion after motion, asking to please delay his sentencing because he wanted to do some good things. And the judge kept granting his request because Patel claimed that he was working as a consultant on development projects that would generate money back to his victims. The guy was essentially telling the court, hey, I'm sorry I stole $179 million, but if you just give me some more time, I can make some of that money back through legitimate business deals. And I guess for some reason, people believed him. So yeah. In November 2017, Patel filed a motion claiming that he had a unique opportunity to earn an additional $1 million for his victims by working on some kind of redevelopment marketing study, and his lawyers even claimed that the money was already sitting in their trust account. And the court-appointed receiver supported the delay because it seemed like a legitimate chance for victims to recover some more funds. And the court just kept granting delays after delays, and finally set up his sentencing for January 9, 2018. What nobody realized, though, was while Nikesh was supposedly working to help his victims, he allegedly was just perfectly pulling off a whole new fraud scheme. Because while he was out on bond and claiming to be a reformed man helping his victims, Patel was secretly running a whole new fraud operation that was even more sophisticated than his last one. It was like he got caught and he was like, you know what? I can do some adjustments here to make it a little bit harder to get caught next time. So he just ran it back while he was out on bond. I mean, at least the guy is dedicated to his craft. So I know you guys are wondering, okay, what was the new scheme? Well, this time he created fake loan documents claiming that a real bank in Miami was out here making loans to convert rural hotels into assisted living facilities. The bank actually existed, but they had absolutely no idea that their name was being used for, essentially just fictitious multi-million-dollar loans. The dude was printing money out of thin air with other people's names involved. Awesome. So Patel, I guess, invented a fake identity called Ron Elias. But Ron Elias supposedly worked at this Miami bank and was signing off on all these loans. He then took these fake loan documents and applied for USDA grants. Again, he just ran it right back at the USDA. Oh, man. So he applied to the USDA for guarantees under the same business and industry program that he'd used before, because obviously he was familiar with that. And the USDA, for some reason, once again, agreed to guarantee these fake loans. Patel then sold the guaranteed portions of the Federal Agriculture Mortgage Corporation, Farmer Mac, for $19.3 million. Oh, boy. But here's the most twisted part of all this. He used some of this newly stolen money to make restitution payments for his first fraud scheme. So when the court looked at his financial records, it appeared that he was legitimately earning money to pay back his victims. But in reality, he was just stealing from new victims to pay back the old victims. The dude was running a Ponzi while delaying his sentencing. Again, I mean, at least he's dedicated to his craft. You kind of have to admire that. And of course, things just keep getting worse with this guy because most of the $19 million, they were not going to the victim's restitution at all. Patel was saving it for something way more ambitious than helping people that he'd robbed, because 3 days before his January 9th, 2018 sentencing date, FBI agents discovered that Nick wasn't planning to show up to court to face the consequences of his actions. Instead, at 7 in the morning on January 6, 2018, agents observed that Nick and an associate were heading to Kissimmee Gateway International Airport, where they just arrested him because they found out this wasn't just like some last-minute panic. Patel had actually been planning his escape for months. And in his possession, agents found an Indian passport, $20,000 in cash, multiple credit cards, 7 luxury watches, and some kind of white powder. It was never identified what this white powder was in court documents, but I'm sure people can put 2 and 2 together here. And to make things even worse for him, those detailed documents outlining his plan to seek political asylum in South America. But again, it just keeps getting worse because what agents uncovered about the escape plan was Nikesh had spent about $40,000 on a private charter flight to Ecuador and even obtained a fake passport. He even wired $3 million to local bank accounts, lined up $500,000 of luxury cars waiting for him, and rented $1 million house. And on top of that, he also hired a lawyer to guide him through Ecuador's asylum and extradition process. And when agents asked him about it, he said that he also applied for asylum in India, but chose Ecuador specifically because of their extradition laws, basically admitting the whole plan was to avoid facing any real consequences in the United States. And the escape plan also included setting up a new life and bringing his wife and family to join him. Patel was also planning to live off the $19 million he stole while he was out on bond, while also claiming to be a political refugee fleeing persecution. But instead of boarding that private jet to South America that day, Nick found himself in federal custody and his bond revoked, and then he got a one-way ticket back to Chicago to finally face his sentencing. And by the time Patel appeared in his sentencing hearing on March 6, 2018, the court had a much clearer picture of who they were actually dealing with. Initially, Nick's pre-sentence report calculated his offense at a level 42, which included some credit for accepting responsibility and cooperating with authorities. But after his attempted flight to Ecuador, probation officers adjusted his offense level to a 45 by adding points for obstruction of justice and removing the credit for accepting responsibility. I mean, even with a statutory maximum of 20 years per count on his wire fraud charges, Patel's sentencing guidelines stretched from 30 years to life in prison. The judge then sentenced Patel to 25 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, and ordered him to pay $174 million in restitution to his victims, which was essentially every penny he stole plus interest. Nick then tried to appeal in March of 2019, arguing that his 25-year sentence was unreasonable, but the appeals court quickly realized that a guy who stole $179 million and attempted to flee the country and continued committing crimes while out on bond probably deserved exactly what he got. And while Nikesh was sitting in federal prison serving his 25-year sentence, prosecutors in Orlando were building a separate case against him for the $19 million fraud he committed while out in bond. So on December 18, 2019, a federal grand jury returned a 13-count indictment against Patel for the scheme involving the fake Miami bank loans. The charge included conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and money laundering. And the case took a while to work through all the counts, but on February 28, 2023, Patel pleaded guilty to all 13 counts, and the FBI had managed to recover about $11.3 million out of the $19.3 million that he'd stolen. But Nick was still on the hook for the restitution for the other victims. And I mean, at this point, it's safe to assume that Nikesh Patel had learned his lessons about the consequences of financial fraud. Yeah, no, absolutely not. He is not finished. Because between January 2021 and December 2023, while locked up in federal prison for his previous crimes, he managed to orchestrate, this time, his most insane fraud scheme yet. Nikesh recruited his wife Trisha as an accomplice and used a legitimate business as their front. The business was Precision Powered Products, a commercial pump manufacturer in Houston, Texas. And following Nick's instructions from prison, Trish contacted the USDA claiming to be a senior representative of the pump company. She then told him the company wanted to expand operations into rural Puerto Rico and needed a loan to make it happen. But you know, in very much so this family's fashion, instead of applying for a real loan from a real lender, the Patels created an entirely fake lending company called Community First Mortgage, complete with fake loan officers and fake documentation. They then made it appear that the Community First was providing $8.54 million to fund the Puerto Rico expansion. And again, the USDA agreed to guarantee 80% of this completely fictional loan, and the Patels then sold that guarantee to a financial institution for $7.4 million. So the fake loan was broken down and sold to multiple smaller financial institutions, creating this complex web of investments, all based on documents that Nikesh was creating from his prison cell. And Trisha was actually making monthly loan repayments on the behalf of the fictional borrower to maintain the illusion that everything was legitimate. They're literally running back the same strategy. The payments were coming from the money that she originally received from selling the loan guarantee. So it was essentially just a circle of fake money that kept the scam running for nearly 3 years. The third scheme finally unraveled when investigators started looking into the pump company and realized that their supposed expansion into Puerto Rico was, well, fake. So on May 21st and May 22nd, 2024, both Trisha and Nick Patel pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud and their roles in the scheme. Trisha was then sentenced on September 18, 2024 to 51 months in federal prison. But the real shock came on October 8, 2024, when the judge sentenced Nick Patel to an additional 27 years in federal prison. So that means that Nikesh Patel could serve up to 52 years in federal prison if he doesn't get out on good behavior. And what's a little interesting about this was the judge could have made these sentences concurrent, which would have meant that Patel just served them at the same time, but instead he chose to stack them, making them consecutive and ensuring that essentially Nick will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. And the FBI, they managed to only recover about $74,000 in cash and a 2022 BMW X7 from their third scheme, leaving the USDA and 4 financial institutions to absorb most of the $7.4 million loss. The total damage from Patel's 3 fraud schemes is over $200 million, and the victims include retirement plans for teachers, municipal employees, and hardworking Americans who trust their money to conservative investments backed by the US government. Pennant Management, the Milwaukee-based investment firm that bought Patel's first batch of fake loans, went out of business entirely, and 42 retirement plans lost money that regular people had saved for decades. Trisha Patel is currently serving a 51-month sentence, and their family has been completely destroyed by Nick's decade-long crime spree. Timothy Fisher, Patel's original partner in First Farmers Financial, was sentenced to 10 years in prison in order to pay over $27 million in restitution after pleading guilty due to money laundering. And as of right now, Nick Patel is 41 years old and serving a sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Williamsburg, South Carolina. And assuming he serves his full sentence and lives to the age of 86, he's likely to be released around October 2070. So you may be asking, what's his new scheme? What's the new strategy? Well, I'm not 100% sure it's him, but someone at least is posting TikToks and YouTube shorts, like the one we mentioned earlier that had these two pictures in it. And I also found this extremely cursed account called Official Nick Patel, which uploads AI slop content about the situation.
Exposing the shocking truth in Nick Patel's case. How did a man who paid back his loans end up with a sentence 2.5 times longer than his co-conspirator? Follow for part 1 of how the justice system failed Nick Patel.
Okay, so from all the research that I've done and everything we've gone through in this video, I would say this seems a bit misleading, to put it lightly, but his next video might just be peak AI slop, because this is the sloppiest of AI slop I've seen in my entire life.
Donald Trump has always been vocal about prison reform. Remember when he said this?
Everybody deserves a second chance. We've seen too many cases of unfair sentencing, and we're working to fix that. We've pardoned great people, people who were wrongfully convicted or served their time and deserve a fresh start.
Trump has the power to change lives. Will he do it for Nick Patel? Follow for updates.
Right, if he said that, why didn't they just use the clip of him saying that? But there's so much more.
You've heard the headlines, scammer, fraudster, mastermind. That's how the media wants you to see Nick Patel. But what if the story you've been fed isn't the full truth? Nick's case has been buried for years, hidden from public view. Why? Because the truth threatens the system. They needed someone to take the fall. And Nick? He was the easy target. Is it because he's Indian American? Because he didn't have the right connections? This isn't justice. This is silence, power, and control. So ask yourself, who's really guilty here?
Probably the guy convicted of stealing roughly $200 million. But there's more.
Nick Patel's love isn't just for his family. It's for communities around the world. He's not just successful, he's making success possible for others. He's traveled across countries, bringing clothes, school supplies, and food to orphanages, giving young girls a chance at a better future. But why does he do it?
Okay, I mean, I can't tell if this account is him, someone in his camp, an odd parody, or like some weird fanboy. It's hard to say. And the most recent one, which is this one, I don't know what they're trying to go at here. Like, what's the point they're trying to make here? Like, imagine going from a private jet that you paid for with people's pensions, then you got caught. I mean, yeah, that's what happens. Like, the internet is honestly quite the fascinating place. But I mean, hey, at least he didn't claim that he was Jesus's best friend and could bring back people from the dead like this guy did, who scammed $50 million from everyday Americans, which is honestly just an insane story I would heavily recommend checking out here. And if it doesn't appear here, it would be in the pinned comment down below. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Subscribe if you're new, drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.